Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight, both here in our auditorium as well as virtually. We are here to do one of our public input meetings for our budget proposal for 21-22 school year. And I am going to turn this over to our budget chairman, Mr. Brian Mitchum.
Hey, good evening. Welcome, everybody. This is our public input meeting. I would like to call on Tina Meunier to present to us the most updated budget. Thank you, Tina.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchum. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, board members, Mr. Pye, and all of our public. This is actually our public hearing. I didn't correct that on my slide. I'm sorry about that, but this is our official public hearing that we have to have every year before we actually adopt a budget. So without further ado, oh, thank you, Lee. Got me all set up. We will jump into our public hearing for our FY 21-22 budget proposal for next year. So Mr. Mitchum said for me to come back and bring some good news this week as compared to last week. So we will say that the budget deliberations in the Senate were concluded last Thursday afternoon on their $10.6 billion recommended budget, which included $1.7 billion additional revenues over the House budget. Yay! So it's now been sent back to the House for conference committee to deliberate and come to their agreements on the differences. So the conference committee report is to be delivered to the governor by May 13th, and the end of the session is scheduled for May 13th. However, the lawmakers have already said that they are going to return in June to continue to meet over this budget. So their dates to meet are the, let's see. This is important. The 8th through the 10th, the 21st through the 23rd, and then the 29th and 30th. So they will probably not have a budget for next year until June 30th. So we probably will not get specific numbers for DD2 until that time. And I just wanted to note that the process is behind at least 2 weeks, and now it's going to be even longer since they're going into June, because the legislators are waiting for the Board of Economic Advisor economists, waiting for their projections, who are closely monitoring the economic effects from COVID-19 for this year. So everything just kind of got delayed. So more good news from the Senate's budget version that went over to the House. We did discuss this last time, that the base student cost was increased to $2,516. So that was a figure that we did build into our budget because we knew that that was exactly $2,516. They have also included in their proposal a 1% employer retirement contribution to be given to us, because that 1% goes into effect for the increase for next year. We don't know how much that is yet. They also talked about aid to local school districts, which is a pot of non-recurring money to be spent, to be given to school districts. Full day 4K additional funding, instructional materials additional funding. So all these additional fundings that are supposed to come out to school districts, typically when the Senate Finance Committee makes their recommendations, they send us numbers for our districts, and they have not done that this time. Also, some good news about the proviso for the virtual students in our district. They will not be cutting our funding if less than 5% of our student population is enrolled in the virtual academy in our district. So that does not appear our numbers do not appear to be less than 5%, or they do appear to be less than 5%. So we should not get additional funding cuts. We should not get funding cuts for that. So yay, that's good news. Two other items that I wanted to point out that, again, we do not have specific numbers, but in the Senate version, they have included a $1,000 raise for all teachers. $1,000. So we could next year get money for all of our teachers to get $1,000, and we would adjust our salary scales. Every step on our salary scale would go up $1,000, and that would be funded by the state. That's from the Senate's version.
Maybe I don't, but I know from past years, teachers listening get all excited. Everybody's waiting for the $1,000. All right, first it's got to be passed by both, so that's not.
Correct.
It etched. When it is passed, it's per cell on the cell block, on the cell block. It's like a jailhouse. There are like 3 years in there. You could have, let's just make up 17, 18, 19s in the same block. If you're any one of those, you get it. You only get it one time, right?
So on our teacher scales for DD2, none of the blocks are frozen until you get to year 28.
28.
Above
Okay.
that, it's not frozen. Now, the teacher's scale from the state only goes to year 23.
So in essence, every teacher would get their $1,000 unless those who are past 28. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. No, we would only get up to year 23.
23 is what it used to be. Yeah.
Yes.
So, wow.
Now, this is coming from the
Right,
Senate
but
side,
you
and they've got to
think if
go
it
back and do their
passes,
deliberations. But-
is
So we're
this
not going to
some-
include this in our budget right now because we just don't know.
But is this something that other districts may be able to go beyond and make sure every teacher, regardless, receives the 1,000? Or
If they
that'll
use
cause
their-
us to redo the schedules, would it
They would
terribly?
use their local funds to do that.
So in other words, we wouldn't have those unless something comes up between now and then. That could be one of the options the board could decide on if they felt that that's what they wanted to do. Because we get this every time when the teachers, generally the ones that's been teaching past 23 years, they're veteran, top-notch teachers. World's experience, it's like, because I'm experienced, I'm being cheated out of this. And that's the problem with Columbia. It's always been a problem with Columbia. Then they give it back to districts like ours that are struggling, that the money's not there. Then the big districts, some that get lots of money, some of them around us, we read in the paper that everybody got it. Then our people get very upset, and that's a morale breaker. It's like, why not us? So I'm
And
just
if they say
throwing that.
everybody, it might just be everybody who is eligible, and they may
Right.
not say that everybody means everybody.
So we
like
just,
what we were talking
that, we
about
just want to
Pauline.
kind of put that out there so people don't get excited, and well, no matter what happens, we'll keep trying to educate people, but, and if we don't change something and it does stay that way, everybody literally will not be receiving the 1,000, every teacher, and we would explain why and what as quick
Right.
as that comes out,
And
it happens.
we could calculate how many teachers are above that and what it would be.
What would
if
be
we
the
were to-
difference? I would appreciate that, so we can throw that out next time if that's an issue, because that's, to me, a real deal breaker after the year we've just had. Okay.
The next item is also a proposal from the Senate, is a 5% increase in bus driver salary based on the state pay scale. So if their pay scale starts at $10, 5% of that is 50 cents. So we would be funded 50 cents for each of ourselves. That would be on our bus driver pay scale. Also for the bus drivers, I just wanted to point out also that for the step increase that was frozen for this current year, I'm getting ahead of myself by one slide, but if we go up by the step for them for this year, and then there's also a step for them for next year, that moves them up 2 steps, which is in some cases about 40 to 50 cents for those 2 steps. So the total of those is almost $1 increase for the bus drivers that we were talking about before. So I just wanted to point that out. That's another good thing, Mr. Mitchum. Yes, sir.
Based on state pay scale, where that 5%, where that number
The-
came from? I know you said 5% based on
They're
state pay.
$10 an hour,
That's
based on their
that's their
$10.
pay scale, $10 an hour? Okay.
Yes. Ours starts at 14, but if they're going to pay us 50 cents, then we could put that as $14.50 to be the.
Because that's what we are remunerated by the
That's
state.
where we are.
Okay.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So more good news that came out from the Senate's amendment. This didn't come out last week. It actually came out a few weeks ago. We've been talking about this a little bit, but I wanted to give a little bit more detail. Good news from the Senate's amendment from House Bill H 3609 regarding the teacher step increase for FY21. So since the state was working on a continuing resolution, the salary scales were frozen. So no teacher in the entire state of South Carolina was given a step increase for this current year. So they unfroze that, and they said we will give you the money to pay your eligible teachers who get a step, again, up to year 23. And it's mandated for them to be paid in one lump sum prior to June 15th, 2021. So that's for certified teachers eligible for the step that came into FY21. The other rules that follow along with that is if the certified teachers were employed with the district on March 1st, they are eligible for the lump sum. If they were here as of March 1st, but they have left since then, they're still eligible to receive that lump sum payment because they've worked their contract times. So as it's DD2's philosophy to capture all of our employees, to treat all categories equally, we would like to propose to also pay the eligible certified and classified employees 2% on their base pay, since that's the average amount of what a step increase is. We had included in the FY21 budget what the local portion would be for the teachers and for the classified staff. And we know that we will be getting some money from the state for this, for the certified teachers. So we would like to propose that. So that would include employees with 0 experience on the teacher scale, because they typically would not get an increase because they're at a 0. It would also include folks who are at the top of the scales, because we included them in our local portion, or if there's no dollar increase in their step. Because like Mr. Pye said, some of the steps were frozen at about 10 years ago. There were like 3 steps frozen when back in FY 9-10 when times were really tough. So those people who are in that step who wouldn't normally get one with this step, we would also like to propose that as well. That's a built-in, yes, sir. Did I explain that okay, Ms. Hughes? You and I were talking about that a little bit. Okay. So since these numbers were not officially included in this year's budget because we were waiting for the state to send us what their numbers would be for the new year, when we have our budget, our called board meeting on Thursday night to adopt the budget, we'd also like to ask for y'all to, if it's your pleasure to, vote on giving the lump sum distribution above what's mandated by the state so that we can cover ourselves in our budget. That's all my fun news, Mr. Mitchum, but it was good. So we just finished our 135th day reporting for FY21. Unfortunately, we went down just a few more students. We were at 24,185. At the 45th day, we were 24,270, which was a reduction from last year's 135th day, which was at 25,298. We did lose some EFA revenue for that, and we have built back into this year's budget 85% return of students. So we hope to bring that back. When we bring those students back, that's an increase in our base student costs, and so it's very helpful that the state increased it to $2,516 over the $2,500, which came out of the House version. However, it would be great if they would actually fund us at what the law states as $3,164. However, they're not, so that's unfortunately a loss to us of over $16 million. The Act 388 impact on Dorchester School District 2 has been tough over the years. We are eligible to increase our millage each year by the CPI and population factor, which is determined by the Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office. We don't have those figures yet. That should come out in May. But those figures would just tell us how much we are eligible to increase our millage. We also have some look-back millage that's on the books of 15.11 mils that we were not, that have not been increased over the past 3 years. So that's a loss of about $4.6 million for those 15 mils that we'll never get back. We do have an updated figure. This was not updated since the last time, but since the very first time, of our operating mill at $332,378, and our debt is at $615,353. Wanted to point out that our fund balance of Dorchester School District 2 is $32,154,835 at June 30th, and we are right at our threshold. We are locked in at 15% cap, so we're at 14.8, although the GFOA recommends for us to have 16.7%, which indicates 2 months of general fund operations. Since we're limited to that locally, it would be great. I know that the board has taken the initiative and sent letters, and I haven't heard anything lately about if they will repeal that, and they're at almost to the end of their session, but I guess maybe since they're coming back in June, we can try a little harder. Maybe they can, we can try again, and maybe they will repeal that for us. Senator Bennett did have a proviso for FY20 that waived it for just that 1 year, and since they're under continuing resolution, that will be in effect for this year, but it's not permanent. We would like to get higher than that. It's helpful for our credit rating when we have borrowings. They look at what your general fund budget fund balance is. We don't want to slip down below 8% because then the State Department gets involved and you can become on fiscal watch and fiscal warning, and then they come in and they take the board's rights away, and we don't ever want to get there. Also wanted to tell y'all a little bit about our state funding that we received from the Coronavirus Relief Fund. $2.49 million we were allocated, and we have spent all of that. It was for PPE, cleaning safety measures, for remote learning. We bought devices. We also had another pot of CARES money. Our allocation was $3.5 million. That was additional economic relief for continued safety measures. They really stressed us to continue to employ personnel and for student learning. The federal funding that we received under ESSER 2, our allocation was $18 million. The emphasis is on summer remediation programs. Those are being planned out now to increase air quality and any building repairs to promote safety. We just last week, hot off the press, got our federal funding from the American Rescue Plan. It's the ESSER 3 fund, and it is $40,417,913. So they specify that 20% of that is for learning loss. So that's another $8 million that we will put, towards the concentrated efforts of gaining on that learning loss area. We haven't really gotten too far into, since we just got this allocation, the other items that we would be spending the money on yet. Again, these ESSER funds are to be utilized for COVID expenditures and not normal operating expenditures of the general fund. So this isn't extra money that we can put towards our general fund to pay for teacher salaries or bus drivers or anybody's salaries, unless it's for learning loss. I will do that caveat for teachers.
Which is how we're funding the entire summer school program. All that's to catch kids up with learning loss. So that money, every time we do it, if this money's allowed, we're allowed to spend it 2 summers or 3 summers, we will be putting money towards that. And also, we're still investigating and feel comfortable that we would qualify because of COVID causing our student enrollment to drop 1,000 kids, and we don't have the teachers. We don't know what's coming back next year. We're guessing at 85, so we're filling the teaching positions. But the teacher shortage, there won't be any out there after next month. So we're going to make sure we do a real good job of that. And if for some reason our students do not come in, we will enjoy lower class sizes for the first time ever, and we will, because of our whole goal is to catch the kids up, and that will certainly play into that. And I think all that is covered in that pile of money, so we're going to be okay. And then we have 2 or 3 years for attrition to finally meet where we're going. So we think that's probably the best expenditure of money possible, is to make sure we have no shortage of teachers.
Is there a date on the ESSER funds? Is there a date that those have to be used or allocated by?
The new pot of ESSER money, typically it's a 2-year plan. We have a technical webinar on that next week, so we'll get some more details on that. But typically it's 2 years past when you receive it.
Okay. And then I know the other question on that we had come up, there was some discussion to potentially use that. We talked about the salary stuff, like what you're talking about, Mr. Pye, but bonuses for teachers, do we know
They
yet?
specifically came out and told us that we couldn't do a blanket bonus for that. It had to be by a specific person or a specific job. It couldn't be that all teachers are doing an extra great job, so they should get the bonus, and it was not going to be paid by ESSER funds in that manner.
Say if a teacher left and we had to hire somebody to fix her, be in her position or to help her with her load because of a health condition or whatever, whether it's COVID related or not, that would be allowable, but it has to be in support of it, can't supplant. Because then it would be operating monies, and we can't use operating monies. It has to be something over and above that will help the learning loss problem.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
What about for increasing sub pay? Could it be used for that? Potentially, possibly?
You know,
I'm
I
trying
would
to
think
what
so.
was-
I would like to think it could be, even if it's a one-time, like a 2 or 3 year, because we're in this COVID period, as long as we're having cases, that's the problem. I'll be very blunt with you, the most time we have getting subs is, they'll ask every time, how long is this for? Well, we need you for 10 days. What does that say? It's COVID related, and the person doesn't want to be in that situation, so they turn us down. If you say, oh, it's just 2 days this week, we have no problems filling those positions. So the shorter term, the longer term, I think people are equating, it's tied to that. Of course, we're not allowed to discuss that, so it puts us in a bad situation. But that really would help us with our numbers, again, with learning loss.
Learning
'Cause we
loss, it
want
has
quality
to-
subs
we
as
want
well
tight
as,
around that.
we want subs everywhere, but we want quality ones.
So that
I
will be
think
good for
that's
us
a
to
good point.
investigate for submitting for our new plan. That'd be great, okay.
And I believe it'll also pay for the people that we're using to help our nurses. As long
Yes.
as there's any COVID cases out there, we have to have a place to isolate the kids, and we have to have coverage for that room so the nurse can still do her job. And I don't think any nurse is sitting down with nothing to do. So we certainly would use it for that too, to keep, we're trying to keep kids in school do the best we can.
Yes, and that is covered. We're doing that now, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep. 9/30/24, so the new set of money goes through 9/30/24. Thank you, Bill.
24.
Okay, as we like to show, our revenues that we receive in our general fund is 74.5% from the state, so that's why we're holding on and waiting for the state to send down some money so that we know exactly how we can, well, not exactly, but how closely we can budget based on the expenditures that we have based on the state revenues that we receive. And then our expenditures are 87% our salaries and benefits, and all other are 13. So some of the others, Ms. Robinson and I were talking earlier, some of the others are for SROs. We spend about $2 million for them for safety and SROs. $4 million was for energy. Another $2 million I told you was something specific. Sorry, I forgot. So for items that are really discretionary, but they're fixed costs mainly. So it's hard to cut in any area with our budget. So as we discussed before, our revenue projections that came from the Senate, along with a change that came from our local Dorchester County folks, increased our local tax revenues for property taxes to $6,487,821 over last year's property taxes. That was an increase for this year, not because of, we asked for a millage increase, but because of increased assessments. That was great. Our state revenue in lieu of taxes, this figure came from the state, is an additional $1.5 million. Our EFA, when we built in the extra $16 for base student costs, and we allocated 85% of the students coming back, increased our EFA monies by $336,000. We did see a slight decrease in our state fringe benefits to employers of $710,000. However, if some of this additional money that comes down from the state would cover that, that could go away as a negative. We did see a state aid to classrooms and teacher salary increase of $606,000, and other state and local revenues, which that was for, mainly for indirect costs that we can receive from the ESSER monies, increase of $847,000. So those total additional state and local revenues were an increase this year over last year's budget of $9,147,640. I will say that the teacher step funding was not included. They did not tell us exactly how much it was going to be, so it was kind of hard for us to build that amount in when we don't have specifics for DD2. We did include the mandated expenditure increases of the teacher salary increase for the now unfrozen FY21 step increase and the FY22 increase, and including fringe, it's $5,761,586. There's the increased 1% for retirement, which was supposed to take place last year, but they froze it. Now it's in place for FY22. That's an additional $1,352,675. So the total of those mandated expenditure increases are at $7,114,264. God bless you. The step increase that we've built in for all other employees, including their fringe, is $2.5 million. And then we had a slight net decrease in other expenditures, which is mainly made up of transfers to other programs. We did not need to transfer so much to our food service fund because we've been working with Sodexo and been able to hold tight with those expenditures, so that's been great. So our total additional expenditures are $9,147,640. Again, we did not include a $1,000 proposed teacher salary increase as revenues nor as expenditures at this time. So for all those words, here are all the numbers in all the different categories. Our current budget for FY 2021 was at total revenues of $216,784,405. We have projected out revenues for this current year, although, again, since we don't know exactly how much we'll be getting from the state, as of this time, we were expecting $213,334,902. So that we use those figures to help us calculate what the proposed budget would be for 21-22. So our proposal for revenues is $225,932,045. That's without knowing what these additional revenues are coming from the state. Again, the increase in the revenues is $9,147,640. So again, all those words into numbers for the expenditure side. $216,784,405 for our current budget. Proposed budget of $225,932,045. And as a summary, we are at a zero deficit. And Ms. Hughes and I were talking, we're like, I don't think we've ever gone to county council with a zero before. We've never been balanced before. And again, just to point out, this is without the additional revenues from the state. There would be some additional expenditures, which could prove to be a wash for the teacher salary side. But there is some room for some growth in there and some additional revenues. That would be great. My proposal would be a recommendation that we take a balanced budget and present it to Dorchester County Council on Monday night, if the board is in agreement. And then when we get our additional monies from the state, which will probably not be until June 29th, 30th, July, for FY22, that we prepare an amended budget after we go through our audit for this current year for FY21 and close all that out. And maybe in November, December, bring y'all an amended budget, knowing what the new state numbers are, and see what kind of items that we could possibly increase. Some of the items that y'all had discussed that are not included, that are considered critical needs, was a transportation department salary adjustment, which I don't know if maybe we just talked ourselves out of that because of the the increase from the state, so that could be taken care of. That would be great. The elimination of the retiree reduction of 10%, take that down to zero. That's $350. Increase in substitute pay by additional $10 perhaps. Increase in some of the other classified salaries. We would maybe come up with a plan, as Mr. Pye had talked about before, to implement that in stages. Reinstatement of guidance counselors at the elementary level that we have not brought back since 2010. If we wanted to do 2 additional SROs, which they are covered right now, for the 2 schools in North Charleston, they're covered by internal folks, but they're not uniformed. Increase in per pupil allocations back to the amount from 2010. And then also, Ms. Hughes and I were talking about this. She asked if I would add this increase in full-time adult support daily rate. Typically, we pay them at the sub rate, but she would like us to have a discussion perhaps later when we're working on the amended budget about working on that group for the full-time adult support.
So looking at that, the first one may be able to be adjusted with what we're looking at, if nothing else changes. The substitute pay perhaps for the COVID monies, and then we're moving down to the counselors could be brought in, but it'd be only for short term because of the social emotional that is being required by all those monies. But again, that's money that's not recurring, so after 24 we could find ourselves in trouble, but we'll have to cross that bridge if that's possible. The SROs to the 2 schools we took that to county council. They didn't seem to have any objection at their level. They're trying to work this, of course, with the sheriff. That's part of his budget and his needs, and so I guess it'll come from his office if they'll let us use any of their help that we're paying for in the North Charleston area.
That would be that we would pay for SROs in North Charleston.
Yes.
Instead of North Charleston.
But through the county,
covering
we would be
those.
using the county people. There's no bodies in North Charleston. It's not they're asking us to pay. They're not
Right.
asking us to pay, they just can't find anybody.
Maybe that will change by
But,
the new year.
but since those schools are in the county,
Correct.
then we were hoping we might could shift some of it there and get some help, at least one of them. And then
Yes.
that would allow us to work on the other one. Okay. Outside of that, we could give perhaps pupil allocations to the schools, one-time money for 2 years, if that works out in our formula, that 40 million, but it'd have to be for sole purpose of learning loss, ever how they want to fund it with tutors, after-school camps, those kinds of things at the school level. We could, I know we can do that, and we're gonna have to show, we have to spend $8 million, they already told us, so I've got to make sure we do that. And of course, full-time adult support rate too, because of the special needs population. They were, one of these funding things, they were mentioned directly, is that we had to deal with the special needs population and not let them fall further behind the mainstream of what's being offered to those students, because we're supposed to be doing extra. So that's something I guess we're still trying to play with to see if that money, since it came from the federal government with that stipulation, that perhaps we could use some of that towards that. And of course, mental health counselors, they're not up there, but that's something, we can't find them anyway if we ask for them. We never can get them, but we certainly, that would be another COVID thing probably, because they lose so many every year that if we couldn't pay for the ones we added, say 2, 3, 4, 6 more, they're like 20,000 apiece, 25, something like that, our share of it, then I think that's what that funds are for again, so we might can make that one. So at least for a couple of years, we could be better off with that than have a $5 million total sitting up there. I don't see any support on the salary survey, of course. I don't think nothing I can think of will cover that.
Those were for some of our
Yeah.
non-certified folks, some classified, maybe increase our secretaries and some of those folks.
Right.
It's hard.
Mr. Pye, the only thing that I see an issue with is I don't want us to get into a situation where we bring in all these extra people and then we only have the money from COVID to pay for them for just a couple of years, and then we end up with all these additional people here, and then we've either got to let them go because we can't afford it, or we just put ourselves in a bad situation. So I think we need to be really careful with that too.
We are, but now were they requiring us to give extra to special needs or extra to tutoring and things? I think that's what it's for. It's not for long term, it's meant to be short term. And of course, any contract we would give would have on there
Right, and that's what I'm saying, as long
1
as
year.
the
You're
people that we
hired for
bring
1
in
year.
realize that it's only gonna be for a couple of years, it's not gonna be you're getting employed by Dorchester 2 and you're
That's
here
correct.
until.
So I would want to know, does the funding end on September the 30th of '24 is when it ends? But does that mean we have to have it spent on that day, or we have to have it allocated by that day, which means the 24-25 school year, we could hire people out of that money? We
I
could
think
be
it ends
getting,
on that time, and that's when we would have to submit our
So we
claim
would then
through
end-
September 30th. It must be spent by then.
okay, so that means then June of '24, which means that we got 3 years with that money. Is that correct?
Till June of '24, yes.
So, I see what you're saying.
September.
That is our
Technically,
fear.
it's September.
We want it to tie to that, and it would have to be short-term, one-time money, as people know. But in this case, it could last up to 3 years. But certainly would be out of the hole that we're in.
Great, great, great. As we just showed last time, our revenue per pupil, based on some of our neighboring districts and some folks across the state, and even the state average, is a little higher than ours. Unfortunately, we are third from the bottom out of 79 school districts. Dillon 4 and Dillon 3 are the two districts that are lower than us, unfortunately. Even the state average is $14,060 per pupil. We're at $10,974. Our neighboring friends in Charleston are at $18,700.
Can I put that in big picture terms? So
Yes.
if you just look between Dorchester 2, and let's just use Charleston, and again, I don't know that that's actually a good measure, but they are our next door neighbors, so we'll use them as a measurement. If you just go, the difference between that over, let's just say 25,000 kids, that's $200 million. $200 million difference
For 1 year.
per year.
That's almost our budget again, total budget.
200 mil, I'm going to say it over and over and over. If people don't get up in arms and people are not, have some passion and conviction around that alone, I mean, you're talking 100 million, even if you just went up to the state average.
Right.
You're talking $100 million.
Based on our, well, I did a calculation based on just where we are with the 24,000 students. So it was a little bit less than that, but
And
yes,
that's
it's a
not-
lot. It's too much.
That's not me, that's not our board, that's not Mr. Pye, that's not what, it's not for us. It's for our kids, it's for the children. And so people are like, well, what would you do with it? And the problem is, again, I'm going to get on a soapbox just for a few seconds, so I apologize. What would you do with all that money? And you see our budget every year, it's the same thing. I've been doing this 6 years, I know a lot of folks have been doing it for a long time. It's the same thing every single year. We never talk about what we're able to add. It's never, hey, look at this really cool thing, look at this program, look at this center, look at this initiative, look at this stuff we can do for our kids and our children. How awesome is that? Like, we're already here, like on our standards. Think about if we went from here to here. And you can't do that. Unfortunately, it comes down to funding. But every single year, it's not what we can add, it's what we can keep, this bare bones stuff. And so again, folks ask, and you know, it's upsetting and it's frustrating when I don't see the passion and conviction around this slide in particular. If that doesn't get your blood boiling as a resident, if you've got kids in Dorchester District 2, I don't know what else gets you going, because that, again, to me, that just gets me in the gut. And so I appreciate those few seconds to get on that soapbox.
That was good. The revenue per pupil is made up of local, federal, and state dollars, and a lot of our neighbors have higher local portions than we do. That's where a lot of their additional money comes from. So what can we do to help? Perfect segue. We could talk to our state legislators. If they could fully fund the base student costs, that would be very helpful for us. That's not 100 million, but it's 16 million. That would be helpful for 1 year, each year, to get 16 million more. As we know, Act 388 will probably never be repealed, but if there's some type of modification that could happen, that would be super as well. That's $8 to $10 million annually that we lose because of Act 388. And then, as Mr. Farnsworth was just pointing out, that the state funding formula, if if somehow we could encourage the state legislators to make this funding initiative statewide for every student in every part of the state to get the same amount of funding, which this was talked about years ago when Allison was still here. She was on a committee to discuss this with Jenny Horn. She brought this out about equitable funding for all students. And that would be great. That would be helpful too. But as we know, we've run up against a wall with that because there are some losing counties in that. So Greenville would lose a lot, Beaufort would lose a lot, Horry would lose a lot, and here we are, poor Dorchester too, where we would gain a lot, but that's just one
I
thing that
just
we
saw
could do.
Fountain in high school, and it looks like 3 times the size of Ashley Ridge High School. And they're getting ready to open it up. And yeah, they have more students, than we do, but it just doesn't seem equitable. But it's like you said, and we've been to general state conventions where they are almost yelling because they do not want things to change, and they're the ones that have more money per student. So we're up against a big lobby group unless we can get louder and get more parents and everyone involved in it. I did want to ask you, and I don't know if I'm too late to ask, but I didn't know if the county council required you to readjust our 5-year plan with all the monies coming in, or if they left you
They didn't
alone.
ask us for that, but I'm going to propose to them that we wait until the fall when we get our numbers from the state before we adjust our 5-year plan, because we gave them what we knew from the House presentation, and we're still going through the Senate, and I would just like to wait until the fall to give them some better numbers. We did look better. We did send them an updated budget template that they asked for that showed a balanced budget, so that was helpful.
Thank you.
Talking to our county council members, good segue, Ms. Robinson, about our county council members. It's not their fault about our local legislation. They are in a tough spot to support a tax increase. It's hard on the businesses to increase, but there are some of our folks, some of our counterparts in the Columbia area, every year they anticipate there's going to be a tax increase for growth and for a CPI. You just need more money to even continue your programs at the current level that they are, because prices increase. So it's hard for us to even we are working really hard to maintain where we are at the same dollars.
But could we go the route of the impact fees? Could we push that on the county level?
We would like to do that, and that's going to take a study that we would get involved with, but that's for infrastructure, that's for buildings, it's not
Right.
for our operations.
That's actually something that Mr. Pye and I have already addressed with our county councilman. And actually, about 5 minutes ago, I just wrote Mr. Pye a note because we were waiting on them to set up a meeting. And I just asked him, had he heard anything about the impact fee meeting? And he said, no, we're going to do that. We're going to set it up. So we'll set up a meeting with them. He's going to call them tomorrow and see if we can't get that set up so that we can move forward with that. Because that's definitely, as we've talked before, all of this we know we need, and we need them to work with us on those things, but that's just a small portion of it. So we've got to have that, and we've got to have the impact fees both to be able to get us where we need to be.
That's correct,
So-
right? Yes, ma'am. Okay, so the rest of our budget meetings, we're showing board approval of the budget. That will go to county council if we have that meeting this Thursday, May 6th, here at 5 o'clock. Then the presentation to county council is Monday, May 10th at 4 o'clock in county council chambers in Somerville. And then they have third reading of their budget on Monday, June 21st at 6. We don't typically, Allison and I used to typically attend that, but I don't think the board members did as such. But I'm sure they would welcome us to come and attend. We may still not know if we have additional monies from the state at that time. We may not know until June 30th or July. But at least for their portion, we would be balanced. And then prepare an amendment later in the fall if you are in agreement with that. So that's everything that we had. What other questions can we help answer?
Does anybody
Yes,
have any other questions?
Yeah, so I guess this is the first time I've ever seen like, sort of the balanced budget. We're not needing money and asking that. Is this like a one-time like fluke, or there's like conditions aligned to that? Like, but what's it look like for next year? Is there like money going away or something that you anticipate? It would be good to ask for more reoccurring money, or?
To ask for at county council, is that
Right.
what you're?
I mean, yeah, so is this on the horizon? Do you see anything changing for next year or the years beyond that we need to be looking out for?
Well, when we prepared our 5-year plan, we did show a decrease or a deficit moving out. But we do have some opportunities to making up for some of the learning loss, to put some of the teachers who would be helpful for the learning loss over to those federal funds. So that could be helpful for us there. We're also able to get some of the indirect costs from these federal funds to come over into the general fund to help us with our operations. And the extra $1.7 billion that they have at the state is helpful for us moving forward too. So they say that's recurring, so that will be helpful. It'd be great just to see what our final numbers will be, to know even going forward what our projections will look like. I hope I answered your question. Okay, good.
Okay, Ms. Wimberly?
So the ESSER funds, those are federal funds, you're saying?
Yes, ma'am.
And then is there any potential for more federal funds? Because I know it sounds like they keep talking about all this money that they're pouring into education. I mean, I know that's not finalized, but is there potential for that? Do you know if that would affect us?
I think that these were the final,
That's the final.
that was the final. That was from the American Rescue Plan Act. That was the latest
Okay.
that President Biden
Gotcha. Okay.
had approved. And we were really, that came in higher
It's
than
a
what
lot,
we,
no, it's
than what we
definitely a
thought
lot
it was
of money,
going to be.
no question, absolutely.
So it will be very helpful to help get the students caught up with their learning loss.
But Tina, didn't, the state's getting a lot of money, they normally, at least it goes to Molly, the State Department, they funnel it back to the districts. They take off what they think they need, and she's given us some earlier. Some of those, one of those COVID things were from the state. It was just extra from their bundle of money they received. So there's still that possibility that the millions they're getting, they may find a need to send some of that down to us.
That could be, yes, sir. That was the coronavirus relief fund that we got in the very beginning, just to get us started, I think, from their state money. Haven't heard any specifics on that. Like I said, we're having a technical webinar coming up next week about this new pot of money, so it's great. They're pretty sticky on federal dollars, and you have to have all your backup documentation. Everyone who's charged there must have proper paperwork, so it's a good bit of extra work, but worth it, definitely worth it.
Okay, Mr. Farnsworth?
I just want to say, and I know everybody up here would say the same thing, thank you guys.
Thank you all.
In a regular year, our budget is hard enough. And this year, where things are changing every single day as far as funding and our budget, and so again,
Challenging.
for both y'all, I was gonna say
Thank
for
you, Billy.
Billy and you, Tina, it's
Mr. Pies had a
unbelievable.
lot of input in it too, I will say.
Yeah.
But they're incredible.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, you look at your team, I look at other districts around the state that have 5, 10, 15, 20 financial people in their finance office, and we're able to do it with you guys. Holy cow.
Thank you.
It's unbelievable. So
We
I
have a
know,
good
and again, I know
finance
everybody up
team,
here.
thank you,
Yeah,
thank you. We have a great finance team, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, anyone else have any questions? Okay, Mr. Mitchum?
Ms. Meunier, thank you again.
You're
You
welcome.
delivered more good news.
No pressure from last time, but hey, I'm
Um,
glad I had some good news.
One more chance on Thursday?
I'm
Is
hoping
that
that this
asking
will
for
be
too
it.
much?
This will be it. If y'all are happy from this public hearing and the presentation, if this is the presentation that y'all would like to go to county council, that's what we'll be voting on Thursday. If y'all have any other suggestions, changes, I can work that in before Thursday.
We really appreciate all the efforts that everybody has made, especially considering these historical times, and we appreciate everything, and we look forward to approval on Thursday night.
Okay, great. Thank you. You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Meunier, and if no one else has anything else for the good of the district, then we will adjourn our budget hearing, and we'll look forward to Thursday night. I
Thank
need
y'all
a
very
motion to
much.
adjourn. Motion made by Mr. Guthrie, seconded by Mr. Farnsworth. Any further discussion? All in favor? 6 with 1 absent. Thank y'all very much. Y'all have a great evening.